This is the Larsen Truss retrofit assembly. So what this is showing is taking the exterior cladding off, doing an exterior renovation. So removing the cladding, replacing the windows, and adding insulation to the exterior of the structural wall. So the structural wall is an existing 2x4 wall, and then we've added an 8-inch Larsen truss to the exterior. So the Larsen truss is made up of 2x2 material. So we install the first 2x2 right at the inside or at the outside of the wall assembly, and that gets screwed into structural members, so either a stud, king posts, or any sort of framing that's within that wall. And then when we are installing the exterior 2x2 material for the outside of the Larsen truss, it is attached with these 3/4 inch plywood gussets that are stapled in, and that spaces out that Larsen truss properly, and then also provides structure so that this exterior part of the Larsen truss doesn't end up sagging down with the weight of the cladding. That space in between is filled with dense packed cellulose, so we can see here what dense packed cellulose looks like. That has to be done by a professional installer to ensure that it is correctly packed to the proper density. And that gets installed all the way throughout this cavity of this Larsen truss, thereby eliminating thermal bridges that would happen from the exterior, from the interior of the wall to the exterior of the wall through studs and whatnot, with that wrapping of the exterior with insulation. In this assembly, the air control layer has now become the exterior WRB. As I said, we're not changing the interior at all, so we've now done the WRB as the air control layer so that we aren't maintaining the interior airtight layer, because it might not have been done super well when the structure was built. We have rainscreen strapping installed to the exterior of the Larsen truss on the outside of this WRB. We used 1.5 inch material for that, and the reason that we used 1.5 inch material for that is when this dense packed cellulose is installed properly to the correct density, it will create a bulge, and if we did 3/4 inch rainscreen strapping, this bulge created by that dense packed cellulose might interfere with the installation of that cladding. For the window waterproofing and installation, we've had to build a 3/4 inch plywood buck around this entire window. So when we are accounting for our window sizes, if we're taking measurements from an existing window, we do have to take into account having a buck around that ties back into the actual structural wall so that we can tie this window and maintain the structure throughout the Larsen truss. And then we've coated this with a liquid applied membrane. This can actually be installed if you built the bucks off-site. You can apply this liquid applied membrane onto those bucks preemptively, and then it doesn't have to be done on site. What we've done is we've installed this window back at the original framing location, and we've sloped this exterior part of that buck so that any moisture, if it does get on there, is guided away from the window and out. With this window assembly, we've done, like I said, we've done that liquid applied membrane, but we also have tape. So we've taped from the WRB into that buck, and then that liquid applied membrane was installed over that tape to maintain that air control layer. On the interior of this assembly, like I said earlier, we're assuming that the interior is not being touched, so there would be no drywall removal or anything like that. So the airtight layer is on the exterior now, and then how we tie in our window to make sure that we maintain that airtightness is the window's installed, and then we have used a backer rod and caulking method. So we install that backer rod with some insulation in between the window and the rough opening, and then we apply a decent amount of caulking there to ensure that it goes from the window frame to the actual rough opening and to this actual liquid applied membrane that we've used for our exterior there. So we have to ensure that that liquid applied membrane is getting installed far enough back so that this caulking is touching that liquid applied membrane, because if it's not, then we are breaking airtightness there. On this side of the assembly, we can see the rainscreen strapping, and then we've left out a bit of a section so that we can see exactly how the Larsen truss is built. So we've got our 2x2s on the outside of the wall screwed into a stud, and then the 2x2 on the exterior side of the Larsen truss held together with those 3/4 inch plywood gussets. Out here we have to have either a custom flashing made, or if a hardware store does have flashing that is wide enough, we can use that. But we, at the very bottom of that rain screen, we have to have that through flashing back going behind this WRB there, and then also taped to maintain that air control layer. With this Larsen truss, how it would work at the top where it meets the roof, the exterior part of the Larsen truss would tie up and into the tails of the rafters, or there might have to be a board put on the tails of the rafters to make sure that each one of these lands somewhere structurally. Then this air control layer would have to tie in and then meet the air control layer that is on the interior. So if that's the ceiling poly, then it would have to tie in and meet that ceiling poly. There would need to be attic sealing done as well to ensure a nice airtight building envelope.